Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us today on this LinkedIn live session. Today, I'm here to be your moderator on behalf of Adaptivist, and we're going to be talking about the predictions for 2025 in the space of service management. And so I'm very pleased to welcome to the stage with me, Effie.
Hello, Phil.
And from the other side of the pond, we have Lacy.
Hey, Phil. Hey, Effie. Happy to be here today.
So just a little bit of housekeeping before we start, and we'll kick off with some introductions. If you want to ask questions, we would love to get your questions. We've already had some in advance, and we've got some great questions lined up to answer. And we've got some predictions and things that you can take note of and quizzes on next year as to whether they're there. But if you want to ask a question, and we do hope that you will engage with us, please do use the comments part of the LinkedIn session. Just put your comment in there as your question, and we will do our best to get to them. If we don't manage to get to your particular question, we apologize now. There's only so many we can cover in this time, but we will use what you put in there as information for us to write future blogs and other things for. So please do take part. Please do raise your questions in the comments. And so without further ado, let's introduce the two people who are going to be doing most of the speaking today. Effie, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Sure, Phil. Hi, everyone. I'm Effie Bagourdi. I'm head of service management here in Adaptivist. I've been with Adaptivist for 2 years now, following the acquisition of my company. I'm in the service management space for more than 10 years. I'm working closely with the Atlassian ecosystem, and my original background actually is banking and finance. On a personal note, I'm from Athens, Greece. I love traveling with my family, with my dog. I love the mountains and the nature. And yeah, that's all for me. I'm really happy to be here with you.
Great. Thank you, Effie. And Lacy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, Phil. I'm Lacy Saute. I'm a business consultant in the service management practice at Adaptivist. I've been here for 2 years now. I've been working with Atlassian products for over 5 years. My background is working with software development teams in multiple different ways. And yeah, I'm very happy to be here and discuss these ITSM predictions with you all.
Great. And you are, of course, another dog owner, aren't you, Lacy?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so all three of us are dog owners.
All three of us, yes.
So we have something in common beyond our service management. And you may even get to see one of our dogs later, because they do have a tendency to come in and interrupt the various calls. And if you've got a question about what is the best breed of dog, do drop it in and we'll offer our opinions on that at the end. Okay, so without further ado, we've introduced ourselves, we've given you a little insight into the fact that we all three of us have dogs, and we've invited you to participate and add questions. So let's just, before we predict next year, or rather this year, 2025, let's just look back at 2024. So looking back at that last year, what was one of the most significant trends that you observed in the service management space? And Effie, would you like to kick off with this one?
Yeah, sure. So I would say that looking at our engagements, the work that we've been doing with clients across industries, there's one thing that stands out for me, and this is that service management is maturing, and it's maturing rapidly. We see a shift towards more sophisticated solutions. There's a clear focus on AI, and AI not just as a buzzword, because it's been for quite some time, but we saw that there is a real driver when it comes to customer satisfaction. And we see that organizations are actively exploring how AI can streamline actually service delivery, but ensure at the same time that they stay regulated, they stay compliant. And we have all these directives, regulations coming in. So this is something that we saw a lot happening last year. So yeah, that's something that I saw in the last year in the service management space. And another trend also has to do with business teams and how much they're invested, let's say, in service management more than ever before. So yeah, that's from my side.
Lacy, what would you like to add to that very comprehensive list that Effie just gave us?
Yeah, absolutely. So Effie sort of already mentioned it, but basically it was something that she mentioned last year, was just like the expansion of enterprise service management. So like, you know, with the IT teams, they're maturing, they have established their practices and everything. And so now that's flowing over into other, you know, departments adopting these service management solutions. So that's been really interesting. And then in addition to that, the CMDB usage, you know, and so like not only are IT teams, you know, utilizing and the CMDB, but you know, HR teams are as well, legal teams, procurement, like everybody's realizing the value in, you know, having this information that's very easily accessible to their agents. So that's what I would like to add.
We better just jump in and say what a CMDB is for those people who are not familiar with that phraseology, especially as we were talking about service management being not just for the IT teams. How would you define, well, let's start off. What do the letters CMDB stand for?
Yeah, so basically it's just a configuration management database. And so like for your asset management solutions and things like that. So for IT, this is things like laptops, servers, network, anything network related, you know, things like that. But then in HR, you know, it might be people information and managers and, you know, information about people's benefits, things like that. That's just that you can have your agents get that information, and you know, it helps speed up the delivery of the services to their customers. So it's helpful having that information accessible.
Yeah.
And just to add on that, Phil, because that's definitely something, as Lacy mentioned, that we saw as a trend. We saw CMDB being used more by business teams than IT. Last year, we saw a great interest in that, and linking, you know, all the assets, all other objects like people with the right services. This is what gives the correct information and feedback back to the service team. And the struggle there is, how can I have a CMDB that stays actually relevant and useful? Something that it's not outdated. We don't want to do like a documentation exercise. So this is also something that a lot of organizations came to us and they said, either their IT teams or their business teams, how can I build my CMDB, but how can I also maintain it and keep it relevant?
I have a little interesting story that I'll just share with the two of you and with everything. So a few years ago, pre-COVID, I actually worked with a company that did plant hire. Okay. Now, when I say plant hire, many people think of big industrial machinery, but no, I'm talking about those green things that were in people's offices. And their asset database, the list of their assets, was a list of all the different plants that they had, which office they'd rented them out to, and where they were actually growing in the nursery and being available, and those that had grown too big that had been put out into retirement homes and everything else. So on that basis, what's the strangest use of a CMDB or an asset database that you have come across? And I'll give Effie a moment to think about this because she'll have the most. Lacy, what's the strangest that you've come across? I'm kicking us off with the plant hire database with lots of potted plants for hire. What's yours?
Mine, so I play roller derby, and in roller derby, we have to do a minimum skills testing every year to make sure that you're like safe to play, right? And so I used assets basically in JSM to assign like values to the different skills. And then when you go to test, you basically just like can submit a form. And then based on what the tester puts in the form, it like pulls data from the assets and populates your score. So I feel like that's kind of a unique use for that.
For me, it's not that exotic or weird, but I've seen CMDBs lately being used in specific industries and holding objects and information that we are not used to see. Lately, for example, we had a client in the maritime industry. So the way that we structured the CMDB had all the information about a vessel and what a vessel includes, right? Like information around the engine, things that we are not used to see as objects. And at the end of the day, all this equipment that you find on a vessel, these are linked to a specific service. So that was quite, an interesting use for me to see that the CMDB can be not only, CMDB/asset management, but then go to industry, let's say, specific assets and very detailed depiction, let's say, of the industry. So yeah, that's my example.
So great. So again, anybody who's watching live and has a unique use that they want to share, please do drop it in the comments. Tell us about your usage. Right, let's go through and let's have a little bit of a talk about some of the predictions. And we started off, and Effie, you talked about how artificial intelligence is really going to come to the fore. It was there in 2024, but it's coming even more. And there's much talk being made about agentic service management.
Yep.
So what does this term mean to you, and why is it going to be important in 2025?
Yeah. Well, it's a term that we're hearing more and more, right? And for a good reason. The way that I see it, agentic service management is all about moving beyond the manual ways of working into something more dynamic, something more intelligent and proactive at the end of the day. For years, ITSM has been very reactive. You wait for an incident, you log a ticket, you follow a set process, you resolve the issue. But with the pace of change today, the way that things are happening, this approach, I don't think that it's something that it's viable anymore. And instead, we are shifting to service management that adapts in real time. It learns from data, and it even predicts situations, anticipates issues before they happen. So yeah, all this is very important, right? Because you can empower the service teams instead of following the static workflow. You can utilize AI, and it's not an AI. It's not a tool. It's actually another agentic AI that works alongside the human agents. So yeah, that's how I see it, and the whole shift from break and fix to predict and prevent, actually.
Lacy, would you like to add anything else to that?
Not really, but the only thing that I would like to say, I guess, is that is like a really great point about like the shift of, being reactive to proactive. That's absolutely been true lately. Like, that's it.
And so if we follow on from that and we talk about as the organizations embrace that AI, that's going to have a lot of impact on a lot of things. We can go back to the usual people, processes, and tools. So let's just talk for a little while about how do we see the impact of AI on organizations in 2025. Lacy, do you want to kick us off with that thought?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so really, like, it's already happening. The integration of AI into service delivery is already, transforming the way that organizations are operating. It's like, shaping roles, automating tasks, and just really like enabling agents to do more important work, essentially. So what I kind of see is like there's this shift from, execution to strategy that's happening. So, with all of these increased automation and things like that, this is like freeing up agents and people to focus on like things that are, more valuable, like more important, like resolving more complex problems that maybe AI can't, and like spend more time planning and again, being like proactive, having proactive approaches and everything. And then of course, like related to the tools, service management platforms, they're already embedding AI into their products, like the conversational AI, chatbots, AI-powered analytics, and just leveraging AI to get better insights and improve decision-making, which also can increase customer satisfaction.
Thank you. And Effie, have you any more views to add on that?
No, I totally agree with Lacy when it comes to people and the shift of focus, upskilling, the, let's say, shift of the process side of things to the more dynamic an adaptive way of designing our workflows. On the tool side and the fact that they are evolving too, I was reading Gartner's predictions that by 2028, they expect almost 1/3 of the enterprise platforms out there to have an AI agent, for example, which is huge if you think about it. And, we will see more and more. So the tools are no longer, just passive systems that interact with us. They're participants actually in the service delivery. And I think that this is why organizations need to rethink their tech stack. They need to rethink their integrations, the governance models, and they need to make sure that AI is working for them and not against them. So, yeah.
As a person who once, a long, long time ago, studied the Industrial Revolution, do you think we will have the equivalent of the Luddites who refuse to accept new technology? And what do you think will happen to those people?
Do you want to go, Lacy, or do you want me to answer that?
You can answer that
one. I think all three of us should have a go at answering that one. I'll tell you what. So when we look back at the Industrial Revolution and we look at indeed the initial digital revolution and look at the people who did not accept the introduction of new technology, the new technology still came and many of those roles disappeared and people had to retrain. And I think a lot of people at the moment are scared that their role will be replaced by the AI technology. And the reality, I would say, from a personal viewpoint is, yes, that role may change, but the importance of service management, the key part is in the word service. You're there to provide a service, and service is usually people to people. Whilst the AI can help deliver better service, it will never remove that people element. Yeah. And the empathy part of delivering services is super important. Many of us can recount many tales of us working with some automated bot on a telephone or on a web chat where the empathy is not there, the understanding is not there. That still requires the human element.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
Also, like analyzing, the more complex problems and stuff. So like a chatbot may be able to answer this one specific question, but what if there are like, what's causing this person's issue, or like, how can we prevent these issues and things like that? That's always going to be something that's kind of needing human involvement, in my opinion.
Yeah. Although I think that AI is slowly catching up also on that side and also on the empathy side. And speaking now outside service management, we've seen a lot of things happening, right? So we've seen, for example, support to patients through AI agents, follow-ups on their well-being. So there are things happening, but yes, you will always need the human element. And as far as upskilling and adapting of roles is concerned, I think that the industry did not expect that people will do that well when it comes to AI. So when ChatGPT went out, when everything started, you saw suddenly a lot of people using it in social media, really easily adopting the tools. And we also see it in service management, right? When you set up a good agent, with the right intents, with industry data, it's being used automatically and people are happy to utilize it. So I think that we will see a lot of shift and focus. And yes, there's an element of people getting worried, but I think that at the end, as it happened before, we will shift towards upskilling and get more AI skills in these roles.
Yeah. Wonderful comment just come in. This human element will always be super important and we shouldn't neglect that point. So absolutely, I think all three of us would definitely echo that comment back in many ways. And that's just a great prompt for me to remind you that we're not here just talking to ourselves. We're here trying to answer your questions and give you predictions. So do drop comments and questions into the chat as well. Okay, so moving on. Effie, for 2025, it's been heard and spoken about a lot that governance and compliance is going to be something that is incredibly important. what do you think about that? Do you think it will be a positive or a negative impact on this? What's your viewpoint?
Yeah, so there's obviously governance and compliance are huge topics right now, and I think that they're only going to get more complex in 2025. And as AI is becoming more embedded in service management, we see that companies realize that they need to rethink how they manage risk. They need to rethink security. They need to rethink accountability. We see, for example, the DORA regulation, right? The fines that can be imposed on individuals. So there is a lot going on there. Regulation is catching up. We've seen some AI-related laws. We've seen some guidelines, as I said. And we're going to see even more focus, I think, on ethical AI, on transparency, and on data protection. And now, is this going to make our life easier? Is AI going to contribute on a positive note towards governance and compliance? It's both, I think, because you have risk coming in, you have bias in AI models, right? You have data privacy concerns, but then there are other things that AI could help us with. It can work towards detecting anomalies faster. It can work towards ensuring policies are followed. So there are both ways of seeing how this will affect compliance and governance. For sure, it's going to be a game changer.
I couldn't agree more, and I think the reality is going to be very much we're going to see the legislation trying to catch up with AI because AI is moving at such a pace. I've been in the industry long enough that I've seen several changes, but I must say that the speed of adoption of AI has been light years ahead of the speed of adoption of previous technology changes. And we know that legislation, governance, compliance, all of that stuff is not the fastest moving thing in the world. And we're going to see an element of change in that respect. So lots of great things, and we've got to see stuff coming up. So Lacy, let's ask you a question. 2024 has just gone, and what's the biggest change that you observed in the service management space that you're anticipating to go stratospheric, head off into the clouds this year? What's your big prediction for 2025?
So I have basically two thoughts about changes, which will, lead into one thing in particular that I'm anticipating for 2025. But the first one is, like, obviously AI, we talk so much about it. There's been so many big improvements in the tools that we use with these AI powered features like chatbots and such. And then the second part is, again, like we've mentioned before about embracing ESM, like that's just grown tremendously. And so I think that both of these changes are going to require organizations to focus much more on the people experience for their successful service management. So, we kind of touched on this already a little bit, but just because you can automate nearly everything and you can have these chatbots and everything, what value does that bring to your customers? You have to really think about how easy everything is to use for your customers. You want them to get the help that they need. You want your agents to be able to provide these services very seamlessly to your customers. And when you're designing these things, not all agents and customers are the same. So you have to really analyze your customers and agents and see, what is going to help them do their job best, what's going to help them get, the answers they need the quickest. Basically, you just have to really consider all of these different aspects of the people that you're working with and serving so that you can have the best people experience in service management. So that's mine.
Effie, what would you like to put in as your major prediction for 2020?
Yeah. Well, on a more, thinking a bit more generally, I think that we've seen organizations accelerating digital transformation at a pace that we have never seen before. And I think it's, as we said, it's moving faster than ever. So the way that we deliver services, the way that teams work, this is not going to change. But I think that there is a challenge with this rapid change, with more business teams coming in service management, that has to do with IT spend. We see that organizations are reassessing actually every investment, and they try actually to balance innovation with financial sustainability and value. We saw last year that CIOs and IT leaders in general, they were pushing for smarter IT spending, and they do prioritize AI, but they surely want to eliminate also waste. So I think that this is something that we anticipate in 2025. It's the speed of change. Things won't slow down. If anything, this will increase, but then we will see some scrutiny on IT budgets. We have some tighter economic conditions. So I think that, the focus will shift from adopting new technology to providing its ROI. Yes, AI is great. Yes, we're going to invest on that. But then what's the real business value, what we're getting out of it? So yes, 2024 was about acceleration. 2025 will be more around smarter growth, I would say.
I'm going to throw a third projection in. And I actually do not know what it will be. Last week, we had the announcement about DeepSeek and the ramifications of that. So I'm going to say that in 2025, there will be something that will happen that will be a game changer that we cannot even begin to predict at this point.
Yeah.
That we don't know what it is. We don't know where it's going to come from. But what it's going to require is for people to actually accept it, understand it, and implement it. So what do you think the biggest challenges that you would like to see addressed in the world of service management in the future? And I believe, Effie, you're going to kick us off with this one.
Sure. I think it's finding the right balance between innovation in service management and governance in service management. There's a lot of excitement around all things that we discussed, AI, etc. But then there is a growing gap. So I think that organizations are still trying to figure out how they're going to regulate things without slowing down the progress. So I would love to see some clearer structures, some frameworks coming from the different governance entities that allow us to trust AI, to be transparent, to have security, and this has to do also with data access and privacy, because AI relies massively on amounts of data, but then who controls the data? Who decides, which data an AI can access or not access in order to provide service to the users? Privacy breaches, data misuse. I think these are the things that I would like to see some work getting done.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And just in my experience, some of my clients are healthcare organizations. And so they definitely have a significant challenge with, AI governance. They're not able to utilize many of these features and things because of different agreements they have to have in place related to HIPAA, So absolutely, this governance piece, compliance and governance piece is going to be huge.
And that leads into one of the comments that we've got in the chat channel, actually. Can we provide some examples of organizations that are currently at the forefront of ITSM transformation? And additionally, what valuable insights or lessons can we learn from that experience? Who'd like to pick up and answer part one or part two first? Who wants to go first? Effie, would you like to kick off?
Yeah, sure. We have the more traditional industries like banking and finance in general, that they have started their journey towards this direction a while ago. We do now see, as Lacy very well mentioned, healthcare We have a good number of clients from that industry that they are looking to digitize their service management. They're bringing in their business teams. And we also see a bit more traditional industries that have not been in a tech industry. We cannot categorize them in tech industries like manufacturing, for example. We see also some significant investments there. As always, the way that we work with them is the same. It's start in phases, utilize, start from the things that you really need to cover, like incident management, change enablement, and then move towards more complex, let's say, practices and processes. But yeah, that's some of the industries that we see. Lacy, do you have something else to add on the list?
No, I don't think so.
I would say the most valuable insight or lesson I would say from any organization implementing ITSM is remember that it is a service management. You are delivering a service, so measuring the success of your service and short feedback loops and responding and improving that service is what you need to focus on. And many organizations in their rush to save money have maybe lost sight of some of that in that respect. Anyhow, let's just move along and remember that we have lots of challenges, we have lots of things. We had a very recent example of a challenge that hit many organizations worldwide and probably stress tested their service management and operations to its limit. And of course, I'm talking about CrowdStrike. So let's just think about CrowdStrike. What would be your top tip for an organization in the future to make sure that we don't have the impact of a future CrowdStrike? What would be your top tip? And Lacy, would you like to go first with this one?
Yeah, I think, just a very short answer would be like proactive approach to incident and management. So, monitoring and having an actual planned incident response, in place. So basically, I think Adaptivist or somebody recently, I read that it was 84% of organizations reported not having an adequate incident response related to this CrowdStrike outage. So that right there, it's like a wake up call, oh my gosh, we need to really focus on this. And then another thing that was interesting too was that it, sparked a lot of talk about not only incident management, but the importance of change management and testing and things like that too. So I think organizations are really taking a hard look at that, those processes and saying, what can we change to make this more proactive instead of reactive?
And Effie?
No, I agree with Lacy. For me, it's really important the pre-release validation. And I think that this is what went really wrong there. Real world testing, actually, too often we focus on the process of testing rather than the actual risk. And we see that many organizations still work with checklists and approvals and schedule windows where you can utilize, more automated validation. You can actually simulate how a change will behave in a real environment. So yeah, pre-production testing, AI also can be utilized here, right? And incremental rollouts, not big bang releases. I think these are things that every organization needs to utilize. And of course, as Lacy said, major incident handling. What happens if this doesn't work? We need to have a major incident response process that's built for speed, and we need to have stronger collaboration between security engineering teams and ITSM teams.
Yeah, I'm going to drop 5 key words into the chat. These are the things that when I, in the previous role, was a service delivery manager, these were the things that I lived by. And they are prevention, detection, mitigation, remediation, and recovery. And I think what we saw with CrowdStrike was all of those 5 words, the different organizations, they showed up their strengths and their weaknesses in that respect. So some people might have been really good at the detection, others were really good at the remediation, others were really good at recovery. But I think every organization they found that there were areas that they were not as good as they could have been in that respect. Any that was impacted with CrowdStrike, pretty much prevention didn't happen for them. So to our audience, just looking at those, let's not dwell too much on the areas that could be improved. Let's focus on where did you feel your strength was during the CrowdStrike? Was it prevention, detection, mitigation, remediation, or recovery? Feel free to add your comment in that respect. We're welcoming that. We're just doing a very ad hoc sample of the people here who are prepared to say this is where they had a strength. And we'll let folks have a couple of seconds just to answer that. In the meantime, we'll start thinking about the next question. And we're coming up to time. We've had some really great predictions for what's going to happen in 2025. We've talked about things, we've engaged, and we've talked about stuff. So let's take it back to personal viewpoints. And let's just look back a little bit about what's happened in the past and what you think is going to bring through into the future. So we've been talking about service management. What's been the biggest service management change in your lifetime, whether you want to do it as your whole lifetime or your working lifetime, up to you? And what impact did this have on you? And I'll start with Effie this time.
Yeah. So in my role and leading solution and consulting teams in service management, I've seen how organizations are moving away from isolated processes towards more connected ways of working, integrated ways of working, breaking down silos, right? So as we said, traditional ITSM was very ticket-driven, process-heavy. I've been working with ITIL3 back in the days. We saw the change in ITIL4, but still, with DevOps coming in the picture, with ITOps coming in the picture, with business functions, we see this cross-team collaboration. And this is a huge change, right? To align service management on this way of working. I think it's now, a core thing. You need to enable teams in order to be able to work in this way. And we see more and more organizations bridging the gap there between service management and even delivery. Integrating incident management with observability tools, monitoring tools, change management with CI/CD. So this is a huge change that happened during the last couple of years, I think, and we will see more and more coming. It's a complete different way of implementing service management.
Brilliant. And Lacy, what's your personal observation?
I mean, I almost hate to say it, but like AI, honestly, there's just been so much development in that area, and it's really like reduced the manual work that like I've had to do even personally, you know what I mean? So it's just really beneficial and helps, me personally, and then helps, collaboration and everything as well too.
As the old guy in the room, I can say that in my personal life, the introduction of computers, and I remember being the first person at my school to take a computing exam. And yeah, so there have been huge impacts. And over a person's working life, there will continue to be huge impacts. I think the impacts of centralization, decentralization, centralization, decentralization goes on repeatedly. The move to I want it to run on my computer to I'm happy for it to run on any computer, those are going to bounce around. There's going to be a lot of things in that respect. But I'd say service management is still, when it comes down to it, it's always about what people experience, and that's what's important to them in terms of what is good service management. And it's not what people say, it's not what people do, it's how people are left feeling when they have that service, and remembering that is super important. So we're down to the last question, unless somebody drops one into the comments. And this is one really focusing on business success. Organizations always focus on can you deliver more with less? We all know that statement. When it comes to budget time, oh, you can't have as much budget as you had last year, but by the way, we want you to deliver this more. So how does service management help organizations achieve, if at all, that mantra of deliver more with less? And Lacy, would you like to kick us off on this one?
Yeah, sure. So I think, just empowering customers to resolve their own more minor issues, that is freeing up agents to do, more important work. And then, of course, just providing this place for your customers to go and answer their own questions, find the resources they need. Really just having a well thought out, planned service management approach is really, that's going to help you, I think, deliver more with less, honestly.
And Effie?
Yes, do more with less is my nightmare. Right, we hear it all the time. But I think it's not a budget conversation anymore. It used to be. I think it's a general. Let's work smarter and let's not waste time, and let's provide value. This is a conversation that it's happening right now with our clients. And I do believe that service management, a good, solution of service management can really help. Automation is something big that can really help. You can do more with less. There are a lot of inefficiencies, manual tasks, repetitive tasks, and this is where automation and AI, of course, can help. And this means fewer resources wasted, obviously, on low-value work, focus, as we said, on more strategic tasks, improve collaboration, across teams, IT, HR, finance. They do not longer work in isolation. Again, this is where we are asked to bring them together and help them be more productive with doing less. Again, their frameworks is something really important, a good platform with automation and integration across business functions, integration with other systems. These are for sure things that can help in the service management world.
Yeah, I'm going to be radical. I'm going to put a load of that and say, I think the first thing you need to do is understand what is the value that you're trying to drive more of.
Yeah.
If you understand, and this is where I think a lot of organizations have done we'll do that too, and they've jumped on the bandwagon without understanding what the value is that they're trying to deliver. They've gone, so-and-so does that, therefore we should do that, without truly understanding what value that brings. And I think that's something which in 2025, off the back of what you've both just said, I think organizations will be focused on what is that true delivery of value, what is the thing we're measuring that value against.
You're absolutely sorry, Phil. Go on. I just wanted to say that you're absolutely right, and that's what we see, right? It's the question. Everyone says, I need an AI powered service management platform. And the question is why? What do you need to succeed? What's your pain point here? And how do you think AI is going to help you? What value do you want to get out of it? So it really spoke to my heart what you said.
And I think the bit that follows on from that is, once you've identified what it is you're trying to get out, how do you actually measure that change? What is the metric that's important to you? We've heard a lot of talk about XLAs. Is 2025 going to be the year of the XLA, the experience level agreement? Who knows? Is it going to be return on investment as the key metric? Is it going to be customer satisfaction measured in some other way than XLA? Is it going to be customer retention? There are so many different metrics out there. And knowing and understanding which one you're trying to shift the dial on is super important. We did get one final question, but before I go to that final question, to anybody who's watching this on the recording, if you have questions that we have not answered, you have opinions that you want to share, you have comments on what we've said, please do add them into the LinkedIn live chat and continue the conversation after. We will be monitoring it and we will be responding in our appropriate time zones. We've really appreciated having you here. You've still got a couple of minutes left if you want to throw another question at us. If not, I will finish off with what are some of the must-have features that have really helped with the ITSM experience. And I'm going to broaden that out a little bit and just take it out of the IT space on its own and just say the service management experience. Lacy, what's your must-have app or feature?
I guess probably SLAs would be really important one, just because, you know, for me, I'm really focused on like the people experience, the customer experience, and you know, you want your customers to be happy and agents to be successful and everything. So definitely setting up SLAs in your projects, and that way you can, you know, identify any gaps there or like make improvements and things like that.
Effie?
I would say a good structured service catalog, and one that doesn't need to be complex. It should be simple, but it should be structured in a way that makes sense for your end customer, and makes sense also to your agents and you know, your teams, in order to get the data that they need around the health of a particular service, what needs improvement, what goes well, what not goes well. And of course, this is linked with a CMDB, but I don't want to go that way. I think that's one of the main things that someone needs to look into.
Yeah, I would throw the third one in, which is the people angle. I would say it's not an app or a feature, but it's empowered by apps and features, which is empowering the people to get responses and services in an asynchronous mode, so that they're not having to talk to people on the phone during office hours. The fact that they can now self-service and that shift left operation. And I think that's been what I would say is one of the big changes over recent years, partly driven by the incredible need for it during COVID, where people were no longer in offices, and that did do a great drive. And unless anybody else drops a quick question in, that's us finished for today. Leaves me to say thank you to Effie and to Lacy for your participation, and thank you to our audience for coming along and listening to what we talk about. And hopefully this has been challenging, enlightening, educational, all of those things, and you've enjoyed the comments and questions that we've picked up and answered for you, and you're going to take some things away that you can apply in your ordinary life. If you've enjoyed this session, which has been focused on service management, the Adaptavist Group has been putting out other predictions for 2025. There's Agile, there's DevOps, and there are a number of others. Do please go and have a look at them on LinkedIn. They're all there as recordings if you haven't had a chance to see them live. And from us, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, Phil.